Welcome to The Cusp, a podcast that tries to give you the straight dope on what's actually happening with artificial intelligence, how jobs are changing, and what that means for education and workforce development. I'm Paul Fain, editor of the Job Newsletter and co-founder of WorkShift. Thanks for listening. LinkedIn has a lot of data about people's jobs and their skills, so few companies have a better line on the emerging impacts of AI. And Aneesh Raman, LinkedIn's Chief Economic Opportunity Officer, is well positioned to share his intriguing take on the technology's potential. Raman, a former war correspondent for CNN who was a speechwriter for President Obama, brings a humanist lens to his optimistic take on how AI can help create a more meritocratic society. As Aneesh describes it, we're poised to become a relationship economy and to move away from being a pedigree economy. I'm excited to share this conversation with you, so let's get to it. So I'm here with Aneesh Raman. Aneesh, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So, when we spoke before, you used the phrase pedigree economy, which really stuck with me. Can you give us a sense what you mean by that and how we got here?
Yeah. As we thought about all the changes hitting work, most of us correctly think about today, what's going to change today, and then think about tomorrow, what's coming in the future. But I've tried to do a lot of work to think about what's been before and sort of act as an economic anthropologist to understand where we're at. What of the current reality is important to protect, and what of the current reality can we be excited about changing? And so with that view, you kind of have to start from a place, I think, objectively, of saying that work has never worked for everyone, that the labor market has never done a good job at its fundamental responsibility of matching talent and opportunity. It is not a transparent market. It is not a efficient market. It is not an equitable market, again, around that core responsibility. In fact, I would say it's one of the least transparent, least efficient, least equitable markets that humans have ever created. So then you go, okay, well, how did that happen? And so, before we get to today, if you go back, let's say 10,000 years more, work was inherited. So, humans inherited work from their parents, like the genes that determine your height. Whatever your parents did, you did. And so that just locked people in their station of life. Very little to no mobility. And that was explicitly, in a lot of systems, the goal. People were supposed to stay locked. So work was inherited. It's only been a couple of hundred years, which I know can sound like a lot, a couple hundred years, but when you put it in the context of tens of thousands of years, that's fairly recent, where we've had industrial revolutions that have reoriented the economy around technological innovations and that have created all sorts of new opportunities. So suddenly, a couple hundred years ago, people are asking themselves this question that generations before never did, which is, what do I want to do? What do I want to be? These are big questions that humans hadn't considered before. And we get excited about that, as we should, because new opportunities emerge. And we start to realize people need new skills for those opportunities. So as manufacturing in the US starts to take off, we now need this sort of manager class. And so we start telling people to get a high school degree. And so high school attendance and completion shoots up. Then as that advances into the knowledge economy and the information age, college becomes a big thing. We need a college degree, ideally a CS degree for durability of your success. And that all shoots up. And alongside that, we all said to, especially higher ed, but education generally, you're the pathway. People will go through high school or college, and then they're going to be great. They'll go as far as their talents and tenacity will take them. And that kind of worked for some people, not for all people, but it's not going to work as we now go into this new era with so much changing in work. We're already seeing the cost of college go up as the durability of the degree goes down. College itself has fixed seats, so not everyone can get into that path. So what happens to those who don't? The majority of workers in America who don't have a college degree but need a job. And so we can't rely on one path anymore for mobility. But what we're in now, we're not in the sort of explicit inequity of before. We're in the implicit inequity of the pedigree economy. And what I mean by that is that at the bottom of the labor market, one of the worst things about it that makes it so opaque is that it's all guesswork. Are you the right person for the job? Am I the right person for the job? It's all guesswork.
Right.
It's not a meritocracy. And what we're using to guess on both sides is, what degree do you have from what institution? What person do you know and do I know them? And what job title do you have at what current employer? And all of that is about risk mitigation for the hiring manager. The more they hit these pedigree signals, the less anyone's going to get mad at them if they hired someone and it didn't work out. But we know that that guesswork leads to tremendous inequity and it locks inequity. So what's exciting to me is that all the changes we're going to talk about are going to end the pedigree economy, because the most important thing to realize about everything I just said, all these things that have been true, that sometimes we think will always be true. A, they were just built by humans like us not that long ago. B, they were not built to be efficient, equitable, or transparent in matching talent and opportunity. But most importantly, C, they won't survive. The
Yep.
changes that are hitting will make the systems we have to change. And that's what excites me the most right now.
Well, really well said. I love that you start, with the Industrial Revolution here to work us up to this moment, because we've got another one of those big disruptions coming. And yet, as you say, I think it's safe to say across kind of our binary partisan divide in this country, people agree this is not a meritocracy and something needs to be fixed. Nobody knows for sure how to do that, but artificial intelligence, I think, is going to accelerate some of that change. I think that's a safe assumption. You take a pretty positive view, I think, about the potential that it poses to move us toward more of a relationship economy, using your language there again. Can you give me a sense of why you think this can be a positive thing? Because obviously there's a lot of fear among folks as well.
Yeah. So the most important thing to realize about AI is that its capabilities are incredible and overlap largely with a lot of the technical work that a lot of us do every day. And at first, I saw everyone get really freaked out by that, because that meant it can do a lot of what I do. And what got me excited instead of freaked out, and I'm just kind of wired this way or forced myself to be this way, was, oh, if it can do all of that, what then will I do beyond?
Right.
And the question of what comes next started to get me really, really excited. As again, I started first by looking back. So again, if you go back in time with me, we told a story of just the inefficiency, inequity, and opaqueness of the labor market. Let's also now tell the story of what humans have done at work. What has been the experience of humans at work? So for tens of thousands of years, we are largely about our physical abilities. Most of that time, it's just agriculture. So you're tilling the field if you're the average human. Then you have manufacturing. So you're fastening things on an assembly line if you're the average human. It's only been a couple of decades that we've had a knowledge economy with the internet, with big data, with computers, where now we're doing this intellectual labor. But even that is small compared to the bigness of our potential. We're sending emails, we're summarizing meeting notes, we're going through procurement documents or budget documents. And so when you look back and realize how little of us we brought to work, then the question of what comes next becomes really exciting, because you start to think about all that we've never brought to work as humans. First of all, we know not all humans have been able to bring their potential to work, but we know all humans have never brought all of their potential to work. And by that, I'll say it simply, like, we've been dismissive of EQ. So if you take the history of work from physical labor, at least to now, the big advent has been IQ matters. And so over the past century, we built all this teaching and training and credentialing around IQ, the SAT, GPA, the degrees you should get are technical degrees that are all about IQ, IQ, IQ. Alongside that, first, we've been largely like dismissive of EQ. Remember, like, don't let emotion get in the way of reason. And then we have left unattended the same systems of teaching, training, and credentialing around EQ that we've done for IQ.
Right.
The only place I really think we've gotten to some level of maturity recently is early childhood education and social emotional learning. Human capability comes at the intersection of IQ and EQ. Creativity, curiosity, courage, compassion, communication. These are the 5 pillars of unique human ability that I've sort of identified. All of that sits at the intersection of IQ and EQ. And the more we know about our brain's ability to learn its way to new potential, especially around these core human skills, suddenly you get excited about what's coming. Because if we've gone from a goods economy to a knowledge economy, but a lot of what was in the knowledge economy, AI is going to be able to do, and robots are going to do a lot of the physical labor of the goods economy that lingers, then what comes next is what I'm calling the relationship economy, where social abilities and people skills and people to people collaboration come to the center of work. I was just thinking the other day, the past of work has been about the division of labor, taking the labor required to produce things and dividing it so that individual people are doing individual tasks. The future of labor is the linking of labor. It is humans doing things together in ways only humans can. And I will say, for your audience especially, what excites me the most is if you have spent your life trying to bring equity to the economy, equity to mobility, every generation where people have thought that including ours up until now, have lived in a world where the inequities were so entrenched, they were explicit and then they became implicit but entrenched, that you couldn't imagine fixing the system. You just tried to figure out a way here or there to pilot or to build a program or get some level of change, some level of momentum. As we move into this relationship economy, suddenly the core skills, resilience, empathy, critical listening, guess who has all the right skills for all the wrong reasons? Historically marginalized groups who have had to use those core human traits to hack the systems that have blocked or locked them out of opportunity. And so I think for all of us who do this work with that cause in mind, the goal right now is to make sure we understand this change and the story of this change, and that we are sharing this story with those we are trying to help and helping them. And we'll get to skills I know next at a very basic level, action this by starting to tell a story of self that is based on the skills they've got already, not the skills they need to get or the degree they don't have or the people they don't know.
Fantastic points. A quick side note here. As you were talking, I was thinking about code switching and, given the deep iniquity that is baked into everything in our society, this is a real example. I was talking with a major corporation about their internship program and how they're trying to diversify it. And they were saying, hey, for people who read your stuff, we need more of that kind of social skills, the durable skills of just how to operate, frankly, in an office environment that's dominated by people like me, a very white male heavy world. And, I just had this thought, like, could you see AI helping there too? I mean, I think there's some potential there to actually help people make that transition. Just wondered what you thought there.
What gets me excited about AI, and I'm not like a purist in terms of being a technologist. Like I have always thought that technology is this tool, unlike any humans have created, that has the potential for us to go after deep, persistent issues that have like created inequity in our economy. I do not think technology has lived anywhere close up to that potential to date. I think we need more diversity in the room building technology, more ambition in terms of what it can do at scale around impact and not just consumer convenience, all of that. But I do think technology is an amazing tool. And so when I think about AI, I think about it both as a tool and its capabilities, which are itself unique, but as a additional force for change. And in there, what excites me the most about AI is the natural language element. Because if you look at AI as the solve at the intersection of personalization and progress, and this is sort of how I'm thinking about it, and it might not be the right words yet, but any issue you want to make progress on. So let's take this one, just information asymmetry or opaqueness of how to operate in the corporate world, right? These things that like you only know if you already know them or you know
Yep.
someone that's willing to tell you them. And that's always been the persistent lock. As an example, I'm an immigrant kid. I didn't know what compound interest was until 2 years ago. I was making, a salary when I started my career at CNN where I could have put money in the market, had more financial freedom now. Didn't know that was a thing. A half-hour conversation with someone in that moment would have helped me know, and I could have, had a different reality now. Good specific example on financial literacy. But all of that is true across all these different areas. So let's pick your issue of progress. Let's say just like transparency of how to be in a corporate environment. What AI allows you to do is now personalize the coaching and tutoring and teaching that you get around that.
Right.
An example just yesterday, as I think about where work is going, I'm realizing neuroscientists are the people I need to really study from, because it's not going to be about technology. It's going to be about the human brain. And what do we know about the human brain? What do we not know about the human brain? How do we really teach and train creativity? And so then I was like, okay, how do I get smart on it? I could get a bunch of books. I could take a bunch of courses. I was like preemptively exhausted by that. And then I went to to Copilot and typed a prompt that's like, I am your student, you are my tutor. And I gave it this crazy complicated set of things that I need to figure out. How do you connect anthropology with economic development, with workforce development, with equity? Walked me through a course, and it started to do that. And so I think already right now, in a way that's never been true, everyone who lacks awareness, who just fundamentally just needs to know what they don't know,
Right.
has a tool that's never existed, not just to find it, like just general search, where then you have to go through it and read a bunch of stuff, but to find it and have it taught to them in a way that they can understand. And that I think is going to be the most radically equalizing thing of AI.
Really good point. And I think interesting to think about digital natives in particular responding well to that coach in a way that maybe even a human would be trickier. But You made a lot of really interesting points about linking all of this to the skills-based hiring moment. I don't need to go too far down this road, but a lot of excitement about it, but not a lot of progress. I think there are folks who think that AI will open up a lot of the skills matching potential, kind of that last step to make this happen technically. But it sounded to me that you think of this in much bigger terms, of how the change will play out there.
Yeah, I mean, so let's look back first. Skill's been around for a while as a term. I've lived it in all the spheres I've been in around economic opportunity for as long as I've been in them. It's been big, it's been mushy. If we're honest with ourselves, almost all the time it's about skills that workers need to get. It's things that they don't have that we're telling them they need to get, which is for good reason because they're shifting jobs or industries, or we want them to go into high growth, high employment, high mobility areas. But it's always started with a deficiency for the person that needs the skill. And then I think it had a little bit of a moment during the pandemic and during conversations around equity where there was this impulse to diversify talent pools. There was this recognition that college can't be the only way, even though it works really well for certain groups who can get there and afford it. Like it can't be the only way that people get hired. And so I think it started gaining traction. And I can report, living within the private sector and talking mostly to CHROs, it has moved incredibly fast in the past few years within the private sector.
For sure.
Like skills is becoming the baseline. So then that's great. Now what? And so then the big hurdle for skills emerged in the past year around the systems of skills, because ultimately to make skills real everywhere, when someone is getting hired and when they are going through the process of recruitment, the systems of that make it really easy to filter for things like degree, for things like past job experience. It's really hard to get that ease of filterability going for skills because skills is this big open arena. What's the taxonomy? How fluid is it? What do we actually need? Is it specific to a hiring manager? And companies were building their own lists, and then they were building in each team a list. And it was clear that that wasn't going to be the way forward. What excited me about AI for skills is suddenly, again, it's both a force to bring skills, because the only way to think about how your job is going to change is to understand the tasks you do, what AI is going to do, what you're going to do with AI, what's left for you to do as a human. And then what are the skills you have already across that mapping, and what do you need to get? So as a sort of like force for change, AI makes a skills-based labor market like inevitable, if not necessary immediately, because there's no other way for any economy, let alone a company or an individual, to navigate things. But as a tool, AI becomes this potential system solve. We're going to, I think, fairly soon be talking about inference skills from AI. And it's going to be really important we talk about responsible AI, that we make sure that people building those tools that are going to infer skills are not baking in existent bias. Like, we
Right.
should always remember, we talk about AI bias, it's because of data sets that exist based on human bias. So we're correcting for that. But I'm really excited as we do that work for what will emerge at the other end. Because if you think about a human and you think about this story I've told about, we've never brought all of who we are. Every one of us has some universality to what it is to be human, but we each are unique for all sorts of reasons that are good and bad about the challenges and joys of our life. Across lived and learned experience, we each are unique, and our uniqueness is increasingly going to become this powerful thing that we have to offer up to an organization, especially where our curiosity aligns with that product or that business or that nonprofit. And so I think AI is going to help us get to a place where we can actually look at humans in a more comprehensive way. I think that would be phenomenally good in terms of equity. But I think right now, the key thing for your audience is understand AI. Again, goes back to just get fluent in the change, understand the story of change, make sure the communities you're trying to help know that story too for themselves, and then get involved. Like when we talk about AI as a technology, unless you are going to be building like hardcore AI as a computer scientist or an engineer, it's natural language. It's just like communication, like you do with a human. Anyone, anywhere right now, as a nonprofit or an educational institution, can be building a GPT for themselves right now. Like everything we talked about, a coach for someone trying to get interviewed can be built right now. I know a bunch of nonprofits that work with a lot of the folks we think about getting them ready for interviews. Right now, it's like an intensive one-on-one human to human experience. They're starting to build GPT that eventually can do the first round of that so that they're able to serve more students. That eventually will turn into an AI looking person that'll
Right.
do a video call with these folks. That'll get them even more ready because they'll like know what it is to interact with a human, or at least get to experience, like practice that. So I think the key thing is understand skills is going to have to be the norm. It already is the norm for us as individuals. If it isn't yet for you, like tell your story of self around skills starting now, help our communities do that. And then really get engaged in the conversations around how do we build AI to help move the labor market to a more meritocratic place? Because I think that's imminently possible.
I really like that you used a personal example of playing with the technology, your anthropology and
Yeah.
neuroscience kind of study guide. I'm coming to this place where I feel like our reporting has really borne out that we're in this play era where you can't really underestimate how much I think everyone needs to play around with
Yeah.
this to see what's possible. But to get to a place where you talk about the inevitability of the change that you're predicting, how close are we to that?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think, we're talking in early September, things could
Yeah.
change by October when I run this.
Yeah.
But, give folks a sense of your optimism about
Yeah.
when we can see some of the real chipping away at the
Yeah.
inequity.
Well, so I'll say in terms of timeline, it will be gradual, but all of this will happen sooner than we think. So yes, like I think by October, this will also be true, but I think where we would have thought a decade out or even like 5 years out, I would shrink that to like 2 to 5 years. So I think it's still, you're correct. We're in this like kind of play phase where in that phase, things kind of move more gradually, but the overall shifts that I'm talking about are going to happen sooner rather than later. And definitely sooner than I think most of us think. Cause as we get through this play phase and we start to see the systems respond, the capabilities of AI suggest that everything's going to happen pretty quick. I look back a lot and try to study these phases of change that happen when you have big disruption. And there, I think, pretty much four of them. And this goes back to the printing press. So not even just like the internet or electricity. The first phase is disruption hits, and we're definitely in that. We have data 75% of knowledge workers are using AI at work.
Right.
The second phase is that jobs then change as a result. And we're in that. We have data that by 2030, the average job, the skills will have changed by about 70%. So if you're not changing jobs, your job is changing on you in terms of your day-to-day tasks and skills you need to do that. The third phase is that new categories of jobs emerge. So we do a jobs on the rise list every year at LinkedIn. 70% of the jobs on the rise this year did not exist 20 years ago. MIT has a statistic, 60% of employment in 2018 did not exist in 1940. And the Fed has said this repeatedly, like technology has never led to a net loss of employment. So yes, we're in the disruption and our jobs are changing, but we know somewhere down the line, entirely new categories of jobs are going to emerge. And then after that, the last phase comes, we are in an entirely new economy. And the new economy, I would argue, has only happened like once of a shift. We've gone from the goods economy to the knowledge economy.
Right.
But we're going to end up in a relationship economy. So then the question becomes on phase 3 and 4, like, what is that going to look like? And that's where I go to these signals we've got. AI capabilities means people skills are going to be more important. 72% of US execs are saying they would prefer soft skills over AI skills, people skills over AI skills. That's how important they are. We know that like US execs, I think it's 30% increase in people skills getting added to their LinkedIn profiles over the past few years. So if you look at sort of AI capabilities and what we talked about in terms of social abilities coming to the center, that's pretty much where the new categories of jobs are going to emerge as we enter into what the new economy is, which is a relationship economy. The thing that I'm most curious about is that I think we might end up with more of us just having our jobs changed than us moving into new jobs that don't exist, new job titles that haven't been imagined yet. And I think back to like ATMs is a good example of that. ATMs, come into existence and everyone's like, oh, there's the end of bank tellers. But actually, like bank tellers continued and increased in hiring for two reasons. One, where an ATM came in, it just meant that bank tellers weren't giving money, but that meant they could do all these more complicated and consequential conversations with, bank customers that were coming in. And two, because of ATM's ability to distribute cash, banks could open more bank locations. They could go into suburbs or into
Right.
areas with one teller, but they knew that they could deal with that with the ATM too. So it actually led to an increase. It changed that job, it led to an increase in that job. So far, we're not seeing any net loss of software engineers, even though, AI can do a lot of that job. Those jobs are changing and still in demand. So the thing I'm most interested in is, do we end up with more of us just shifting jobs we have versus like new categories emerging? But I think everyone should get ready for it today by shifting in their job as the job shifts on them, and then you'll be good to go for whatever comes.
Well, I'm obviously interested in the data that LinkedIn and has access to in terms of all of those questions. But as you were talking, I was thinking about a really interesting piece I read about the Philippines. Obviously, a huge call center economy. It's like 38 billion a year. And none of the real major impacts have happened yet. But some of the estimates are that, about 300,000 jobs could be eliminated with 100,000 created in the next few years. Who knows, right? But like, that's a tough space, the call center one. I mean, I think there are some pessimists who would say they're probably not going to try to retrain as many workers as they're going to
But
eliminate.
that's a great, let's just stop and stare at that one
Please.
first.
Yes.
So I think first, we have yet to see big swings either on job creation or job loss. Bloomberg just had an article of the New York Fed, or is the Fed, I don't know if it's New York Fed from yesterday or the day before, we're in September, just showing that there's been no measure job loss because of
Right.
AI.
Yep.
So we don't know, but I am bullish that like it's not going to be something that we all have to fear. Now,
Right.
take that one example. I am a customer service rep in the Philippines.
Hmm.
Let's go back to the story I told about skills and the importance of us helping our communities tell their story of self around skills. This is exactly why. If I am that person and I define myself professionally by my job title, I am a customer service rep,
Hmm.
then I am entirely linked to whether there are customer service jobs, even if I understand the tasks are going to change and I'm going to do. But if I define myself as because I'm in a customer service job, that means I have core skills like empathy, like critical listening, like, collaboration. Think of all that they have to manage
Definitely.
that are going to be more and more necessary as skills for every other function in a company, for every other sector beyond whatever sector they're in. If I start talking about the job I have as a badge of the skills that I really have and start thinking about, well, where else would I want to take these skills? My options are either upskill with customer service because there will remain customer service jobs, but they will be different. So do I want to stay in that path? Where is the task, setup going and how do I upskill to that? Or like, do I really love this work beyond just the fact that I'm a customer service rep, the key parts of it that are empathy, critical listening, communication, collaboration, whatever it may be? And what are all the places that are going to need that, given that all jobs across all sectors in all markets are going to need to index on these skills? I think the only people that should be worried and they can do something about it are people who, what's the right way to say it? People who kind of like don't want to learn. And I don't mean it in that sort of way, because I don't think anyone actually doesn't want
No,
to
I hear
learn.
you.
I think
Yep.
that like we've removed curiosity from learning, and that's made learning this thing that a lot of people think they have to do. And when they're done, they're done. But all of this is going to require all of us every day to learn more new things,
Hmm.
to like upskill, reskill. Like Microsoft CEO has this line, the era of the know-it-alls is done. We're in the era of the learn-it-alls. So you've got to learn, unlearn, relearn. There's a futurist from the 70s describing today who is like, in the future, the illiterate will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, relearn, not those who cannot read or write.
Great.
We're in that moment. So the only person that I would be worried about is someone that just like, for whatever reason, constitutionally doesn't want to have to do that. And for those people, you can find your way to wanting to do that. Like understand what learning has been for you, what the systems have made learning about. No matter who you are, you spend some time in your day curious about something. You're reading sports scores, you're following like fashion trends, whatever it is, that is you learning, and figure out a way to reintroduce learning into your life as a deliberate practice. But aside from that group, everyone can have agency with the skill story. And everyone who is human has agency with a story of the relationship economy where human skills become more core.
Well, what I really like about how you relate that to the person working in the Philippines call service center, AI opening up, helping them to see what skills they have, and then seeing the path to a different career or, changing. As you were talking, I was thinking about how Texas, I just read this yesterday, is really getting creative and finding teachers in different professions. And, that's at a one-off level. That's hard to do. But if you have an automated way of seeing who could
Yeah.
be good for that and connecting them with opportunities, you can really see the potential there.
You're making me realize, probably the one thing I haven't said is where we've talked about skills, we've generally talked about them as skills gaps, right? That's the phrase.
Right.
What's the gap that we have in a in-demand workforce need where there's a skills gap because people locally don't have those skills, or as an individual, what's the gap you have? What's exciting me about where we're going is skills transferability is about to become more and more of a thing, which again, when I tell that story of skills, we've always started with the deficit. What do I not have that I need?
Right.
skills transferability starts with, what do I have that I can leverage? And the more that all of us are thinking about our careers at the place we're at or across different places as a movement of the skills we have as we accrue new skills or deepen the skills we have, suddenly there's tremendous flexibility, optionality, agility for workers in that labor market that will be a benefit to the businesses because they will need to stay agile and have that flow happen too. So I think that's like the thing of what you just described is the skills transferability part. And how do we make that a normal way to think about like what we want to do next?
Absolutely. And it was the last question here. In the framing that you're using, it's making me think that I've been wrong to think of AI as merely a technological solution to the skills conundrum. It's more of a thing that is the underpinning of everything, right? Like it's like AI generally. People aren't going to look at their phones and say, I'm using AI. They're going to say,
Right.
I'm using my phone. Is that right to say that to frame this really as AI as like the ocean that skills transferability swims in? Is that right?
Yeah, it's such a good point. We're in this early play phase. So we keep talking about AI, AI, AI. We're not going to be in this phase much longer where we're doing that. Let's just use the internet as an example. I was just recalling this story recently. I was an intern at the Today Show in 2000, and the Democratic Convention was in LA. So we were out there, and with some college friends, we got a hotel room. I forget what the chain was, but we booked it online. And we showed up, and the guy was like, I don't have your booking. Like, where'd you book it? We said, with the internet. And he's like, who's the internet? They don't work here.
Right.
And we can laugh about that now. And then we can also acknowledge that since that moment, we don't use the word internet anymore. The internet just exists. And then there are all these things that exist on top of it, from e-commerce to hybrid work to everything that exists on our phone. That is AI. Like AI isn't a thing. AI is a new reality of technological capability that all the things are going to emerge from and exist within. And that's the right way to think about it. So that's how you get to the place where you realize we're in a new economy, where the systems are going to have to adapt, because AI isn't just a new version of email. AI is a new version of work and life.
We're in the information superhighway phase of talking about AI. I love that.
Yeah.
Aneesh, I could keep you on much longer. Thank you so much for indulging the tangents here. Just a fascinating conversation.
Thanks for having me. And thank you and all your listeners for the work you're doing, because it has been work of like heroes and heroines to try to hack the systems to make them work better. And we should all feel gratitude and responsibility that we're alive at a time when, and we are the humans who will be able to completely update these systems.
Thanks for tuning into The Cusp. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to subscribe. You can visit us at thecusp.ai. The launch of this podcast was made possible by the collective philanthropic support of the Walmart Foundation, GitLab Foundation, Cognizant, and the Kapor Center. Thanks to our supporters and to you all for listening. Catch you next time.